Have you ever wondered why a single glance can stir a man's deepest longing, as if she carries an invisible flame that both beckons and warns? In the dim corridors of desire she moves like an enigma, her silhouette etched against shadows he cannot name. This is the forbidden shadow, the part of her soul veiled in mystery, where light and darkness entwine in a silent dance. It is here in that hidden realm that men find themselves drawn, tethered by an instinct they scarcely understand. She does not offer herself fully at first. Instead, she lingers at the periphery, an archetype of whispered promise and untold depths. From a Jungian lens, this woman embodies the Anima's unclaimed territory, the forgotten feminine within the collective unconscious, reshaped and reclaimed in her own image. She stirs the Anima projection in him, igniting a quest not for conquest, but for encounter with the unknown. He chases a silhouette that shifts at the edge of his vision, awakening longing beyond mere flesh. In this lure lies the paradox of attraction. She is both magnet and mirage. Her silence hums like a low tide, pulling him into depths where comfort dissolves. Modern trauma psychology tells us that mystery can feel like safety to some wounded hearts, a space where projection becomes refuge. And so he projects onto her his fantasies, his fears, his abandoned hopes. But she carries her own shadows, echoes of past betrayal, fragments of a fractured self woven into her presence, like constellations in a night sky. Observe how she uses detachment as armor and art. Stoic philosophy whispers through her posture, a Senecan restraint in her measured breath, and a Marcus Aurelius vigilance in her unyielding gaze. She does not beg for attention. She commands it by absence. When he approaches, she is already centuries away, walking paths of her own making. Her strength is quiet, a sovereign silence that shatters the noise of his ambition. In that silence, he hears the echo of his own doubts, his ego trembling before an inner authority he cannot claim. Yet she is not cruel. Her power lies in sovereignty, not manipulation. Each subtle shift, a parting of her lips, as though she holds secrets unspoken, a tilt of her head that gestures toward unseen realms, reveals a fragment of her shadow. And in revealing, she invites him to confront his own. The forbidden shadow he cannot resist is also a mirror, hidden desires and repressed impulses shimmering back at him. He sees in her what he longs to integrate: raw authenticity, fearless vulnerability, the capacity to stand whole even in darkness. Archetypal analysis reveals the shape of this dance. She is the wounded healer turned temptress, the paradoxical figure who beckons by revealing her wounds. Her suffering becomes a beacon, a testimony to survival and transformation. He senses his own wounding mirrored in her grace, and in that recognition, a silent communion is born. He follows her trail, not to mend her, but to meet himself in reflection, to glimpse the shadow he has long denied. Occasionally she speaks not with overt declarations, but with poetic provocations that ripple through his psyche like currents beneath still water. "Do you know the taste of your own longing?" she might whisper her question, unfolding in his mind like a map to uncharted territories. These provocations are second-person arrows aimed at the heart of his self-awareness. He cannot ignore them. They pulse beneath his ribs, beckoning him toward inner confrontation. As this quiet seduction unfolds, the tension between approach and retreat intensifies. In classic Jungian dynamics, this is the tension of the opposites, conscious desire versus unconscious resistance. She embodies both dancing between invitation and withdrawal. He feels compelled to follow even as fear of the unknown tightens his chest. Yet each step closer reveals more of her forbidden terrain, an invitation to explore depths he once feared. She is the threshold guardian of her own psyche, the keeper of the secret door. He stands before her trembling at possibility and peril alike. In that charged moment, the world beyond her shadow pulses with potential, a realm where integration of light and darkness breeds wholeness. If he dares to cross, he risks unmooring the self he thought secure. But if he resists, he remains forever captive of half-truths and projections. This is the magnetism of the forbidden shadow, an attraction born not of surface beauty, but of depth and duality. It is a call to transformation, cloaked in the guise of a woman who simply knows herself too well to be tamed. She offers no promise of easy fulfillment, only the mirror of his own becoming. And in that mirror, he glimpses the path toward individuation, a journey into integration, where shadow yields not ruin, but rebirth. She drifts deeper into her own inner labyrinth, and he entranced follows like a moth to a candle's flame. But this flame is no ordinary beacon. It is the burning core of her shadow, purified by her willingness to embrace every broken shard of her past. In that smoldering center, she discovers radical self-acceptance, a sovereignty forged in the crucible of her wounds. When he draws near, he meets not a fragment of her choosing, but the totality of her being, light and darkness waltzing in unison. He senses it before he can name it, a fearless authenticity that shatters his defenses. She does not shy away from the parts of herself that society deems unlovable. Instead, she lifts them into the light, anger, grief, desire, fear, and holds them as sacred. In this act of honoring her own shadow, she enacts what Jung called the work of redemption, transmuting psychic poison into elixir. To witness her transformation is to witness possibility incarnate the promise that one can be whole without seeking permission. You watch her stand at the edge of her own abyss, gaze, steady arms open, and in that moment you realize the magnetism you feel is not for her alone, but for her capacity to stand in the storm without flinching. She invites you to do the same, to lean into your shadows and feel the surge of your own power. Her example whispers that vulnerability need not equal weakness, that authenticity can be more seductive than any artifice. As he follows, he experiences his own shadows stirring those hidden narratives that once skulked in silent corridors of his mind. Long-buried desires surface demanding acknowledgement. He feels them as a tremor beneath his ribs, the ancient thrum of longing for wholeness. This is no simple crush. It is a call to inner revolution. To love someone who has mastered her shadows is to confront the shadows within you, else the attraction curdles into obsession. She remains a step ahead, not out of cruelty, but self-preservation. In her sovereignty, she knows the cost of premature surrender. Her attraction is not a trap, but a test. Will he meet her there in the raw unknown, or will he recoil, retreating into the safety of familiar fantasies? If he dares to stay, he glimpses the fertile darkness where alchemy happens. If he flees, he carries with him only a fragment of her and a mirror reflecting his own flight. Observe how she weaves stoic insight into her every movement. She greets disappointment with equanimity, knowing that pain and growth are inseparable. When he falters, she offers no consolation, for she understands that true healing cannot be bestowed, it must be claimed. Her provocations take on a new edge. "Are you willing to face the void within you?" she seems to ask, and in doing so, she becomes both guide and gauntlet. You feel his pulse quicken as he steps closer, trembling at possibility. The air between them crackles with an electric charge, a resonance of parallel journeys converging. He is drawn not only to her form, but to the horizon she extends before him, a promise of self-discovery that transcends all past limitations. In her shadow, he glimpses his own potential for regeneration. Yet danger lurks in the shadows of this forbidden dance. If he mistakes intensity for intimacy, he risks conflating projection with genuine connection. She is not a canvas on which to paint his desires. She is a living mosaic, each piece essential, each fissure part of her story. To truly engage with her, he must learn to behold her complexity, to honor the jagged edges as much as the polished facets. In this unfolding narrative, the forbidden shadow reveals its most potent truth. Attraction is a portal to transformation, not merely a spark of chemistry. She embodies the living paradox of the anima, the unconscious feminine that both enchants and threatens to consume. He must learn to navigate that perilous threshold with courage, Only then can he move beyond the surface of desire into the depths of soul encounter. She stands as both mirror and catalyst, reflecting his shadows while urging him forward. You, the observer, feel the pull, as though it were your own story playing out. This is the power of the collective unconscious, casting its spell. We recognize her archetype because it dwells within us all. The forbidden shadow she offers is not exclusive to men. It is the call to every seeker who yearns for wholeness. As their dance intensifies, a transformation unfolds quietly. He sheds old stories of unworthiness, of fear, of longing for validation. In her presence, he learns that his value is intrinsic, not granted by another's approval, and she, in turn, feels the stir of connection that does not demand sacrifice of self. Two sovereign beings moving in tandem shadows, entwined, forging a new pattern of relationship, one grounded in mutual respect and fearless authenticity. This is the alchemy of the forbidden shadow, an invitation to transcend separation and step into interwoven wholeness. In her mystery, he finds himself. In his pursuit, she discovers her boundless freedom, and we, the silent witnesses, are reminded that true attraction transcends the confines of fantasy. It is the sacred spark that ignites the soul's evolution. A subtle shift occurs when she allows her vulnerability to become visible, an almost imperceptible tremor around her eyes, a softening at the corners of her mouth that speaks of surrendered defiance. In that moment, the gravity of her shadow transforms from an obstacle to be overcome into a luminous threshold. He senses the change like a tidal turn, as if the currents of his own heart have reversed course. She stands not as an enigma to solve, but as an invitation to witness her becoming, and in doing so to witness his own. Her path through the labyrinth of psyche is marked by ritual acts of self-compassion, where once her wounds were closed gates. She now tends them like sacred fires, tending each spark with gentle curiosity. This is the sacred pause before integration, the moment when shadow and light acknowledge one another in respect rather than war. Jung called this conjunctio, the sacred marriage of opposites. She embodies that union, radiating a whole presence that dissolves the illusion of fragmentation. When he beholds her there, he glimpses the possibility of his own integration, a soul unshackled from old patterns. You feel an impulse rising within you, an urgency to stand at your own inner crossroads. She has become your catalyst, though you may never meet her face to face. Her shadow resonates beyond gender, echoing in every human heart that has hidden pain in the dark. You hear her unspoken question: what price will you pay to claim your own wholeness? Will you dare to look where you feared to see, to name what you long kept nameless? He realizes that the allure of her mystery is inseparable from the challenge she presents. To follow her is to commit to an inner pilgrimage. In her silent presence, he confronts his habitual need for control, his compulsion to define and contain what defies definition. Each attempt to grasp her only sends her deeper into the realm of the untamed. She is the wild frontier of his own psyche, and she will not be tamed. Instead, she invites him to become a companion to his own chaos, to learn the language of his own heart's uncharted territories. There are moments when their energies align so closely that silence becomes a shared eloquence. In that suspension between breaths, he senses her heartbeat echoing his own, as though the barriers between them have thinned. Yet if he listens too eagerly for confirmation, the moment slips away, dissolving like mist in the dawn. The forbidden shadow cannot be captured, it must be earned through patient attunement. And in that earning, a different reward awaits the alchemy of recognition, where two sovereign beings meet, not to complete each other, but to honor each other's completeness. She never forgets that her first allegiance is to herself. Even as she opens toward connection, she maintains the boundaries that preserve her inner sanctum. This is the paradox of love. It flourishes most fully when nourished by autonomy. Jung's notion of individuation echoes here. She knows that relationship is a mirror, but not a mirror that should swallow one's reflection whole. She will illuminate his shadows, but she will not absorb them. In this dance of proximity and distance, he learns that true intimacy requires the freedom to depart, to return to remain whole, whether together or apart. You might ask yourself now, when have you compromised your own boundaries for the sake of connection? Where have you mistaken surrender for unity? The forbidden shadow she embodies is a reminder that some intimacies are earned over time, not seized in instinct. To claim her mystery as your own prematurely is to rob both yourself and her of the transformative power a slow, reverent approach yields. As dusk deepens and the world around them falls away, he stands at the precipice of a choice to retreat into the safety of old narratives or to step forward into uncharted intimacy. Her silhouette softens in the twilight glow, a silhouette that once seemed untouchable now beckons him to touch his own depths. This is no longer about conquest or obsession. It is about courage, the courage to feel, to risk, to become. In the quiet aftermath of that electric moment, she withdraws into her own orbit, allowing space for reflection. He feels the pull of absence, like gravity, each beat of his heart, a reminder of her echo. In this void, he confronts the residue of his past attachments, the phantom voices that once told him he was not enough, the anxious whispers that love must be earned through sacrifice. Her withdrawal is not rejection but invitation, the sacred pause before reunion, the silence that calls him to examine his own hunger. He discovers that longing itself can be a teacher. As days pass without her presence, he feels the ache sharpen into clarity. Each memory of her, the curve of her smile, the soft cadence of her voice, the way her shadow unfurls in candlelight, becomes a mirror to his own inner terrain. He begins to discern how easily he had ceded his power, chasing validations offered like breadcrumbs instead of demanding his own feast of self-worth. Her sovereignty, once a threat to his security, now illuminates the path to his liberation. You might recognize this in your own life, the impulse to fill absence with noise, to mute the discomfort of waiting with ceaseless activity. But here in the hush she creates, you learn that emptiness can birth revelation. The forbidden shadow she embodies is not vanishing, but gestating, taking shape in the fertile darkness of your own becoming. And when you embrace that darkness, you discover it holds the seeds of your most luminous self. He reaches out with intention, not desperation. His gestures carry the residue of his inner work, measured, sincere, born of a desire to meet her as an equal rather than a seeker at her feet. He sends messages that speak of respect rather than longing, invitations laced with curiosity rather than expectation. Each word is a step toward a new kind of intimacy, one rooted in reciprocity, where both souls risk exposure and both risk withdrawal. When she responds, it is with the gentle precision of someone who knows boundaries as gifts. Her words arrive like soft lantern light in a moonless night, illuminating without scorching. She acknowledges his effort, praises the courage it took to face the silence. In her response, he hears echoes of his own transformation, the acknowledgement that he too carries a forbidden shadow worth revealing. Their reconnection ripples with a different energy now. The dance resumes, but the choreography has shifted. No longer is he pursued by projection. Instead, he approaches with curiosity. He asks questions that dig beneath surface pleasures. What shadows do you treasure as parts of your beauty? He might ask, his voice steady, and she replies not with polished platitudes, but with stories of her own inner storms. Moments of despair turned to metamorphosis, moments of rage tempered into resilience. You feel the charge of that exchange as if it pulses in your veins. This is the crucible of authentic connection, two souls daring to name their shadows aloud, to witness one another's dark corners without flinching. Jung believed that out of such mutual revelation arises the potential for collective healing, that when one dares to show her shadow, she lights the way for others to do the same. As their words weave between them, a shared vision takes shape, a relationship that honors autonomy and interdependence in equal measure. They speak of dreams that linger at the edges of consciousness, desires for creative collaboration, for adventures that transcend the known. And in naming these dreams, they cement a bond forged not by need, but by mutual aspiration. Yet subtle dangers persist. The forbidden shadow remains both magnet and maze, its contours ever shifting. They must remain vigilant against the familiar snares of projection, the impulse to believe that the other can fill voids that only one's own self-awareness can repair. So they establish rituals of check-ins, moments of pause, where they each speak the state of their own inner world. In these rituals, they practice what Jung called active imagination, engaging with the voices of their psyche rather than silencing them. You might hear the echo of these practices in your own relationships, moments when honesty feels risky, but yields profound connection. The forbidden shadow, once a zone of fear, becomes a shared playground of growth, and as they traverse it together, they find a freedom neither could attain alone. As moonlight filters through her window, she sends him a final message, before dawn, a single line that carries the depth of her sovereignty. In shadow and light, I stand whole. Will you stand with me? He reads the message and feels a convergence of soul and story. With deliberate breath, he types his answer, understanding that this is more than a reply. It is his own declaration of becoming. The dawn's gentle light filters through their separate windows, yet in that glow, their worlds feel inexplicably aligned. He rereads her message, 4 simple words carrying the weight of centuries-old longings, and senses the final threshold before true communion. She has offered him not a surrender but a covenant. Stand in your shadow, and together we will illuminate new ground. This is the crucible where every relationship either transforms or combusts. As he crafts his reply, he feels the weight of choice settle in his chest. Will he claim the courage to stand whole with her, or retreat into the safety of incomplete selves? In his silence, he hears the chorus of his past voices, urging him back to familiar patterns of attachment and fear. But another voice, quieter yet insistent, reminds him of the man he glimpsed in her presence, a man capable of integrity, of honoring boundaries, of meeting darkness with compassion. When he finally responds, his words are neither too eager nor too guarded. He echoes her sovereignty in shadow and light. I choose to stand with you whole, unafraid and free. With that message, he seals their pact. In Jungian terms, they have enacted the great rite of union, where 2 completing figures embrace the sacred marriage of opposites, not to lose themselves, but to deepen their individuations. She reads his words on the cusp of morning and allows herself a rare, unguarded smile. In that moment, her shadow softens, not because it is less present, but because it is honored. She no longer needs to withdraw to preserve her wholeness. Instead, she invites him in, as co-custodian of the realm they have conjured together. Their shadows intertwine, not as chains but as threads in a resilient tapestry. You can almost see the shift in their energetic field. What once crackled with tension now hums with potential. They begin weaving new rituals, shared practices that honor both autonomy and intimacy. Perhaps they greet each other each day by naming one shadow they observed within themselves, offering curiosity rather than judgment. Or they may set aside moments of silence to sit in mutual reflection, allowing the unconscious to speak in symbols and dreams. He speaks of a recurring dream, a vast desert at dusk, endless dunes shifting under invisible winds. She recognizes the symbolism, the landscape of unclaimed possibilities, the need for patience in the face of impermanence. Together, they explore the dream's contours, co-creating active imagination exercises that guide each to uncover buried desires. In this shared inquiry, they practice what Jung termed transcendent function, allowing conscious and unconscious to dialogue, yielding spontaneous insights that neither could achieve alone. You, as observer, feel the resonance in your own psyche. You sense how a relationship so consciously navigated becomes a vessel for collective healing. Their union transcends personal gratification. It becomes an offering to the wider fabric of soul. When 2 sovereign beings meet in shadow, they create ripples that transform not only themselves, but every heart attuned to their frequency. Yet the path remains guarded by perpetual tests. When old fears surface, perhaps he finds himself yearning for reassurance, or she notices the flicker of dependency. These become opportunities for deeper practice. Instead of succumbing, they pause and name the underlying wound: fear of abandonment, dread of engulfment, longing for approval. By speaking the unspeakable, they dissolve the unconscious grid that once defined them, forging fresh neural pathways of trust and resilience. In these crucible moments, Stoic wisdom merges with Jungian alchemy. He recalls Epictetus's teaching: "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When anxiety surges between them, they ground in the present feeling, the breath, noticing the body, choosing to respond with curiosity. She invokes Seneca's counsel: "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." Each challenge becomes a portal to deeper freedom. Their story unfolds not as a fairy tale, but as a testament to what human connection can achieve when shadow is welcomed rather than shunned. They embody a new archetype: the sovereign lovers, each a monarch of their own inner domain, yet sovereigns in council. Their bond is sealed by mutual respect for the hidden realms they each carry, the dark passages no daylight alone could traverse. As twilight approaches once more, they prepare for their first in-person encounter since this inner transformation began. It is not a meeting of idealized projections, but of genuine souls, scarred and shining in equal measure. He chooses a simple act. He brings her a journal, its pages blank as a symbol of their co-authored journey. She in turn offers him a small obsidian mirror, a reminder that our shadows hold portals to our deepest light. When they finally stand face to face, the air between them thrums with unspoken gratitude. He meets her gaze without flinching, and in that fearless exchange, they both feel the pulse of collective consciousness, the heartbeat of all those who have ever dared to love without shrinking from their own shadows. This is not the end of their journey, but the sacred beginning. In the forbidden shadow they have woven into their tapestry, they discover that attraction's true gift is not possession, but partnership in transformation. And in that partnership they become beacons for others who yearn to claim their own wholeness. Their footsteps echo softly as they approach the small garden, where moonlight dances across dew-laden petals. He pauses at the gate, feeling the thrumming echo of all that has passed between them. Not letters or messages, but shared shadows and emergent light. She stands under an arch of wisteria, every petal tracing her silhouette in lavender whispers. In that instant time bends, and they exist only in the charged space between heartbeats. He steps forward with deliberate calm, each movement guided by the echo of his inner vow to stand whole, unafraid and free. She watches him with an intensity that both comforts and challenges, a gaze that seems to read the spirals of his soul. You, the silent witness, feel the weight of history in their stillness, centuries of projected longing of Anima and Animus seeking reconciliation. He greets her with a bow of respect, not a flourish of expectation. No words flicker on his tongue until he places the obsidian mirror in her palm. She lifts it to the moonlight, seeing her own shadowed reflection refracted in black glass. In that moment, she knows he has grasped the currency of their bond, the willingness to face what the world would hide. She responds by extending the journal he brought, its pages empty and waiting. With a delicate stroke of her pen, she writes a single line, a private invocation that summons them both. Here begins our shared alchemy. And with that, the pact is sealed, not by grand declarations, but by this simple act of co-creation. They sit on a stone bench, shoulders grazing in silent solidarity, and the world retreats until only their inner landscapes remain. He opens the journal, reading aloud the words she has written as though they were incantations. Within these pages, the shadow finds its voice. Then he pauses, meeting her eyes, his voice steady. Then let us listen together. The echo of his invitation reverberates through the cool air, as though the garden itself breathes in anticipation. She smiles, and the tension of months dissolves into a soft exhale. With a flourish, she begins to write her first shadow confession. I once believed that surrender meant loss. He watches the curves of ink form her truth, and he senses how this act of revelation ripples outward, dissolving barriers that once felt immutable. When she finishes, he closes his eyes and reads aloud, but surrender is the cradle of transformation. His voice carries the weight of his own journey. He almost hears the echo of Jung's words about the alchemy of soul. She nods, her eyes glimmering with unshed tears, tears not of sorrow but of relief that the hidden parts have found safe harbor. In the hush that follows, he reaches for his own pen. The paper awaits blank and expectant. He writes, I carried my fear of unworthiness like a cloak. She leans closer, her breath warm against his cheek. You can almost see the warp and weft of their psyches, intertwining two threads, weaving a tapestry stronger than either alone. With both hearts beating in unison, they read each other's confessions aloud. The cadence of their voices mingles with the nocturnal song of crickets and distant frogs. Each sentence they voice illuminates another corridor of their inner labyrinths. He admits how he once masked his need for connection behind stoic resolve. She discloses how she once believed vulnerability was a razor's edge. As they speak the unspoken, the moon arcs higher, casting their shadows on the ivy-clad wall. Those shadows stretch and converge, overlapping in a dance of unity and duality. In that projection, you recognize the sacred marriage of opposites conjunctio incarnate. Their silhouettes pulse with life, revealing how two independent beings can share a single flame without consuming one another. She breaks the hush with a gentle question. Will you journey with me beyond this night into the terrain of our collective dreams? He takes her hand and holds it firmly, as if anchoring both of them in this tender covenant. Yes, he answers, for in your shadow I find the path to my own freedom. In that simple exchange, a portal opens. They fold the journal and rise together, stepping into the moonlit garden's winding path. Each step is a vow renewed, each breath a shared hymn to sovereignty and union. They walk without needing to speak, attuned to the silent conversation that pulses between soul and soul. You feel the resonance of their union echo in your own being, an invitation whispered to every part of you that longs for integration. Their story transcends romance. It is a blueprint for any who dare to love without losing themselves. In the alchemy of their forbidden shadow, they have discovered a freedom that radiates beyond themselves, calling you to claim your own. The night stretches before them, infinite and pregnant with possibility, and as they disappear along the moonlit path, you sense that this is only the beginning of a journey that will unfold across the landscapes of psyche and flesh. In the hush after their departure, the garden seems to sigh, petals trembling as if touched by unseen hands. The moon lingers in silent witness, casting silver tracings along the winding path they tread. You sense that their footsteps are echoes of ancient rituals, pilgrims venturing into the sanctum of their own intertwined souls. In this sacred space, separation and union fold into one another like petals at dusk. He feels the pull of her absence, even as his heart carries the warmth of her hand. His mind, once a battlefield of longing and doubt, now knows the assurance of inner alignment. Yet a subtle tension persists, the call of everyday life, the gravity of old stories threatening to yoke him back into half-truths. She too returns to waking hours with a tremor beneath her calm, the challenge of integrating this newfound intimacy into the contours of her daily selfhood. This is where the true work begins. Away from the moonlit garden and shared journal pages, they must negotiate the currents of ordinary existence. Jung warned that the greatest threat to transformation is complacency, the tendency to repackage old models of relating within new rituals. They resist this trap with vigilance. He texts her mid-morning a simple line that rings with meaning. How does your shadow greet the day? She replies with equal brevity, with gratitude and curiosity. In these exchanges they practice micro-rituals of attunement, honoring the shadow's presence in every paused moment. You might feel inclined to dismiss such exchanges as trivial, but in truth, They are the warp that holds the tapestry together. Each check-in, each moment of conscious reflection deepens the trust between them, and more importantly between each and herself. Their relationship becomes not an escape from reality, but a crucible that illuminates it. Every commute, every chore, every interaction with the world becomes an opportunity to witness their shadows and weave them into conscious narrative. He attends a meeting at dawn, eyes flickering to his phone's screen when her message arrives. I noticed impatience stirring within me today. I breathe into it. He feels pride and recognition. Her admission reminds him that shadow work is not a destination, but a living practice. When his own impatience flares in the midday heat, he pauses, closes his eyes and breathes as she taught him, acknowledging the tension before letting it pass like smoke on the wind. Their bond deepens through these shared acts of self-observation. They cultivate what Jung termed the transcendent function, fostering dialogues between conscious intention and unconscious depth. She sends him a recording of her voice reciting, "Epictetus, no person is free who is not master of themselves." He listens during his evening run, feeling each word settle into his muscles like tempered steel. In turn, he writes a reflection. "Today I witnessed fear tighten its grip. I met it with compassion." She replies, "And in that meeting, your heart expanded." These rituals blur the line between relationship and inner practice. They become co-architects of a shared spiritual laboratory, experimenting with techniques of active imagination, shadow journaling, and mindful presence. Their experiences ripple outward, inspiring friends and colleagues who observe the quiet transformation unfolding between two seemingly ordinary people. Yet, challenges persist. When a sudden crisis rocks his family, a health scare that triggers old anxieties, he instinctively reaches for her guidance. She holds him in her calm, mirroring back his fear without judgment. But she also reminds him of his own resources. "You are more resilient than you know." In that moment he learns that the forbidden shadow's true power lies not in dramatic gestures, but in steady presence. She will not rescue him, but she will stand beside him as he faces his own storm. Likewise, when she encounters professional setbacks, a project rejected without explanation, her old wound of feeling unseen reopens. He resists offering quick reassurance. Instead, he asks, "What does this sting teach you about your own worth?" Her pause before replying speaks volumes. She is learning to hold her own grief with tenderness as she once held his. Their shadows meet across text and silence, crafting a dialogue that neither could have sustained alone. You witness how their love story defies convention. It is not a fairy tale of instantaneous bliss, nor a martyr's tale of self-sacrifice. It is the alchemy of sovereign hearts, imperfect, evolving, radiant, in their refusal to revert to half-lived lives. Each struggle becomes a portal to deeper freedom. Each victory a testament to the power of conscious union. As summer deepens and the world around them hums with vitality, their connection takes on new hues. They plan a weekend retreat to a secluded cabin by a mountain lake, a pilgrimage outward to mirror their inner voyage. There, they will sit in silent dawn watches, journal side by side, and share dreams by the fireside. In that sacred retreat, they will honor the cycles of light and shadow, solitude and communion, as they have honored within themselves. And you, dear listener, are invited to witness and partake in this unfolding drama. For the forbidden shadow does not belong to them alone. It is the undercurrent of every human heart, beckoning you to step beyond surface attractions and into the domain of soul. Will you heed its call? In the stillness before dawn, he rises while the world sleeps, mindful of the soft glow filtering through his curtains. His thoughts drift to her, her laughter echoing in moonlit gardens, her steady voice guiding him through inner storms. Yet this morning he honors the space between them, knowing that love is the art of holding both presence and absence in compassionate tension. He opens his journal pen poised above the blank page and begins, "Today I cultivate patience as my highest virtue." This simple ritual lays the foundation for his day, weaving shadow awareness into every choice. Meanwhile, she greets the dawn from her own window, inhaling the cool air as if it were the breath of her deeper self. Instead of immediately plunging into tasks, she pauses in silent meditation, nurturing the sacred connection between body, mind, and soul. In this practice, she embodies the Stoic ideal of beginning each day with introspective inquiry. What emotions do I bring into this sunrise, and welcomes them without judgment? Her vulnerability becomes her strength, a luminous portal that beckons him and all who witness her to honor the full spectrum of their humanity. By mid-morning, their separate routines unfold in parallel harmony. He walks the city streets attentive to the micro moments where his shadow might emerge, impatience in traffic judgment, in a colleague's tone, fear at the unknowns lurking in tomorrow's meetings. Whenever he senses the stirrings of reactivity, he recalls her words, "Name your shadow to tame it." And so he names, "Here is my anger at inefficiency. Here is my dread of failure." By acknowledging these feelings, they lose their covert power, allowing him to choose actions rooted in awareness rather than impulse. She in her studio encounters her own tests. A painting that once flowed easily now resists her brush, the colors refusing to harmonize. In that moment, she feels the familiar twinge of frustration, an old wound whispering that her creativity is flawed. But instead of collapsing into self-criticism, she leans into the resistance. She lets the strokes become imperfect explorations, transforming the painting into a visual metaphor for integration, places where darkness and light converge to create unexpected beauty. She texts him a photo with the caption, "Shadow meets canvas." His reply lands as a lifeline. "You make the invisible visible." Through these exchanges, their practice extends beyond words into daily alchemy. You might wonder how ordinary moments can harbor such depth. The forbidden shadow is not a rare spectacle, but the hidden undercurrent of every mundane act, a chance to choose awareness over habit. As you reflect on your own day, consider the minor discomforts you typically bypass: the twinge of envy when someone else succeeds, the tightness in your chest during a tense conversation, the ache of unmet hope. What if, like them, you paused to name these shadows and greet them with compassion? What new pathways of trust might emerge between you and your own inner world? Late afternoon brings them back to each other in miniature reunions. A voice note here, a shared article there, each communication a vessel for revelation. He shares an excerpt from Epictetus. "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." And she responds with a personal insight I discover daily, that becoming is more potent than being. Their dialogue becomes a living collage of wisdom and personal experience, weaving Stoic principles into the fabric of Jungian soul work. As dusk settles, they prepare for a ritual that bridges the gap between the ordinary and the extraordinary. They light candles on their respective tables, flames flickering like watchful sentinels, and open video call windows. For an hour, they sit together in silence, allowing the flicker of each other's candle to symbolize shared intention. No small talk, no performance, just presence. In that shared quiet, their shadows converse across screens, forging intimacy that transcends distance. During these silent vigils, unexpected insights surface. He notices the cradle of his own breath, steady and unhurried. She senses an old grief soften at the edges, like ice melting under gentle warmth. When words finally emerge, they are not rehearsed declarations, but truthful reflections. "I felt my fear dissolve when I watched your flame," he confesses. "I found courage to face my doubt when I saw you remain still," she admits. Each confession deepens their bond, reminding them that authentic connection demands the courage to reveal even what frightens. You watching this unfold might feel both longing and inspiration. Their partnership is not preternatural. It is forged by daily commitment to shadow and light. It offers a template for any relationship brave enough to dismantle illusions of perfection. To love without losing oneself is to partner in mutual transformation, a journey that requires humility, empathy, and unwavering curiosity. As night deepens, they close their candles and drift towards sleep, with hearts humming in synchrony. Tomorrow, new challenges will arise, unexpected setbacks, emotional currents that pull them off course. Yet they will meet these trials with the same alchemical mindset they have honed together. Pause, name the shadow, greet it with compassion. Choose response over reaction. In this practice lies the promise of enduring intimacy, a bond that not only weathers storms, but grows stronger through them. And so the tapestry continues to unfold, two sovereign beings weaving their forbidden shadows into a shared masterpiece of love and self-realization. Their story does not conclude with a single triumph, but persists in each deliberate breath, each courageous confession, each silent vigil beneath candlelight. It reminds you that the path to wholeness is not solitary. It thrives in communion with those who dare to meet you in your entirety. As twilight deepens into velvet night, their shared journey reaches its apex, not in grand declarations, but in the quiet certainty of true belonging. She stands at her window, gazing into the city lights, and he watches from his own vantage, each heartbeat echoing the others. Across the miles that once felt insurmountable, they have forged a bridge of shared shadow and light, a living testament to the power of conscious union. In this culmination, separation dissolves into unity, not as loss of self, but as expansion of soul. She allows herself a moment of pure presence, closing her eyes and inhaling the latent electricity of their bond. In the shadowy depths of her own psyche, she feels the final vestiges of fear loosen their grip. The wounds she once thought eternal now radiate a soft glow of transmutation. This is the alchemical moment Jung described prima materia, giving way to pure gold. She is both the blackened lead of her past and the radiant metal of her becoming inseparable, indivisible. He too stands at his threshold, feeling the weight of old narratives lift like morning mist. No longer driven by craving or compulsion, he inhabits a spacious freedom. His longing, once a frantic pulse, has settled into a calm river, steady, nourishing, alive. In this space, desire becomes a gentle flame, rather than a roaring fire, guiding, rather than consuming. He feels his own sovereignty shimmer in the hush between heartbeats. You witness them now in tandem, two sovereign souls who have traversed inner deserts and climbed shadowed peaks, who have learned that intimacy is not the eradication of boundaries, but the respectful dance along their edges. Their love story is no fairy tale of rescue. It is a heroic epic of mutual alchemy, where each broken shard becomes a facet of brilliance. They stand as equals before the altar of their own wholeness, offering nothing less than authentic presence. In the final act, they come together without ceremony. No grand ballroom, no scripted vows, only the quiet resonance of two hearts beating in conscious accord. She reaches for his hand, her touch a benediction on all that has come before. He meets her gaze, his eyes reflecting both the stars overhead and the abyss they have faced. Words are unnecessary. Their souls converse in silent symphony. Yet a final gesture seals their covenant. She lightly traces the lines of his palm, as though reading the map of his inner world. Here, she whispers, lies the territory we vowed to explore together. His breath catches in the tender gravity of the moment. He replies simply, and here, pointing to her heart, is the home I choose to honor. In that reciprocity, past and future collapse into an eternal now. You feel the pulse of collective resonance, an undercurrent that ripples through the hidden chambers of your own psyche. Their union offers a template for all who yearn for authentic connection, to stand with another, not as halves seeking completion, but as whole beings choosing partnership in transformation. Their love becomes a beacon, illuminating the path from projection to genuine encounter, from fear to fearless affection. Now, as the final chapter draws to a close, they release the rituals that guided them here, journals, candles, whispered vows, and step into uncharted freedom. The container of their relationship remains, but it is no longer defined by strictures or tests. It breathes like a living organism, fluid and adaptive, thriving on trust and creative tension. They have learned that true intimacy is less a destination than an ongoing pilgrimage into ever-deepening layers of shadow and light. In this sacred finale, she turns to him with a serene smile, her eyes reflecting the constellation of their shared trials and triumphs. He bows his head in gratitude, honoring the fierce grace she has shown. And in that final luminous moment, all that remains is the radiant truth they have unearthed together. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.